Registration opens, gather round. The future of creative fields profound. Martin Dallon's voice sets the tone in spaces where creativity is known. At the ACM Symposium, where ideas ignite, creative futures shining bright. From morning talks to evening glow, in the heart of innovation we grow. Registration opens, gather round. The future of creative fields profound. Martin Dallon's voice sets the tone in spaces where creativity is known. At the ACM Symposium, where ideas ignite, creative futures shining bright. From morning talks to evening glow, in the heart of innovation we grow. Registration opens, gather round. The future of creative fields profound. Martin Dallon's voice sets the tone in spaces where creativity is known. At the ACM Symposium, where ideas ignite, creative futures shining bright. From morning talks to evening glow, in the heart of innovation we grow.
Welcome back, everybody. It's been a wonderful day, and what a way to end it with this fantastic panel. Joining us again is the legendary Roz Kwame. We've got Zaylee John Wilson from the Hippodrome. She's the head of creative partnerships. We've got Amo Talwar, the head of Punch Records, and we also have Patrick Ross, who's the COO of Music Ally Digital Distribution. Is that right? Oh, sorry. Well, we'll get into that in a moment. So, reflecting on a number of the topics that we've covered today, I thought a good way to start the conversation, having a panel of such esteemed guests, is to first ask how you've noticed the industry change during the course of your career, because in all of your pathways, a lot has changed. You know, I'm thinking certainly as a record label, it's not just streaming, because before that is file sharing and a whole number of things. Obviously, we were just talking about the pandemic and ticket sales, and you know how you get around running a performing arts center when you can't have people in a confined space. So I just want to open it up and maybe have everyone share a little bit about the changes they've seen over their career in the creative industries, and maybe the direction you see it going.
Does anyone else want to go first? Is it on me? Okay, cool. Yeah, massive amount of change. Starting with the tech side of things alone. Being old enough to have come into this from vinyl, like literally vinyl records, from vinyl to things that didn't work like mini discs, to CDs, to MP3s, to streams. That's just 4 of the steps, but it's been a massive transition for a practitioner. I remember going from vinyl to MP3, and we went from taking a couple of record bags to one record bag, a CD box, a handful of mini discs, and just presented with the options of tech in the venues. So now you got one turntable, one CDJ, a couple of other gadgets. That transition was absolutely massive. And in terms of how it reflected back on us, the practitioner, you know, if you like, just the DJing side of things, it took a lot of people out of the business. Some people weren't ready to make the transition for whatever reasons from one piece of kit to another piece of kit. Some people couldn't afford it. Some people tried to stay with what they liked, i.e. vinyl, in an MP3 era, which just didn't work. You get to the club and there are no turntables anymore. There's just CDJs. So from that respect, absolutely massive, but also culturally as well, without a shadow of a doubt, the industry for a black music practitioner has definitely changed in terms of doors opening, scenarios changing, recognition, more talent coming through, etc., etc. So yeah, in a nutshell, from my perspective, yeah, huge amounts of change across the industry.
And as a follow-up to that, would you say that you've noticed the same kind of change in the way that people consume the music from a radio perspective? Because perhaps now with streaming platforms where people can have every song that they ever would want to hear, they don't really need to even search for it on the same level. Is it more that perhaps some listeners have fallen off just because they're able to listen to what they want when they want, but on the flip side, the people who are turning in are looking for the curatorial side of things? Or how have you experienced the radio side of the progression?
Well, the general trend of speech out there, if you like, is no one's listening to the radio anymore, which is a load of nonsense, I can confirm. Otherwise, they wouldn't be making money hand over foot, would they? And if anything, they're getting more aggressive in the space. So people are still listening to the radio. What the radio gives them and their demands from the radio have definitely changed. But to be honest with you, as a specialist music practitioner, I can confirm that in the nicest possible way, the sheep still want a shepherd. Do you know what I mean? You can have 1 million records, but you still want someone to tell you what's the good records amongst the million. And for that, they come to specialist music practitioners like myself. And that doesn't seem to be changing anytime soon, regardless of how many playlists you can access. You know, once you begin to realize that the Spotify algorithm just gives you more of the same and potentially the same record in a weekly cycle, you're like, hey man, I need to listen to Ras and find out what's hot this week, brand new. Do you know what I mean? Because I can barely keep up. So it's not as massive a change as it would appear.
Hello, hello. Oh, there we go. Turn the microphone on. Step one. I think I will probably approach my answer from a slightly different angle. So I'm head of creative partnerships at Birmingham Hippodrome. So what that is I oversee all of our work in education, our community work, our participation and talent development work, our access and inclusion work, our associate artist programs, and our creative partnerships and consultancy. And the work I do now really has been a real kind of journey through working with communities, working with young people, working with those that are on the fringes of education and society. And that is the thing that sort of drives me and I'm really passionate about. And so in thinking about the journey that I've been on in my career in that space, the biggest thing for me is the fragility that we find ourselves in around our ability to make things happen. And we know that there's lots of challenges around funding, how we access funding. It's more difficult to tour work. It's more difficult to access things. I'm not trying to paint a really negative picture, but I think the flip side of that is that the sector for me feels more innovative now than it ever has. And I think that's because we have to find creative approaches and different approaches to finding money, making things happen, working in partnership, more so now than we ever have before. I think there are so many fragile organizations that are only a few steps away from not existing anymore, that partnership and collaboration is more important than ever if we're to make things happen and we're to try and stabilize as a sector. So yeah, I'd say for me that's the biggest change I've seen in my space.
And then I'd ask as a follow-up, particularly because I happen to talk about the importance and innovation and sustainability that one can have through multidisciplinary collaborations. As you know, as you said, this can be a fragile time, but is this possibly also an opportunity for great innovation? And oftentimes in the art world, some of the best art has come during the most troubling times, and we're forced to think outside the box. We're forced to do things in new ways, and so I would also potentially counter that with, say, the advent of Spotify, where seemingly the gatekeepers, were, issued for a platform that anyone can join. The downside being that how do you stand out when you have 50,000, 100,000 tracks being uploaded a day? And is this possibly a way of doing that is through your collaborations and also securing each other's future through cooperation as well?
Yeah, I think it's more important now than ever to be able to redefine your goals, redefine the work that you do. There's been a few people that have talked about that today. The world is changing fast and the world continues to change. And if we don't adapt to move forward and innovate in new ways, we'll get left, individually we'll get left behind, but our organizations will be left behind. So I think partnership is really key to that. I think it challenges us to think differently. It challenges us to be in different sorts of spaces, and it gives us opportunities to do things in a way we might not have done them before.
So, looking back, I think just the word creative industries is a relatively new word. It's only 25 years old. I think if you look at our sector, it's where I googled it just before I came on the panel. It's like worth 125 billion quid. So I think in the last 25 years, people have realised we're bigger than construction in this country. creative industries, and we've created departments. And what's happened is the evolution of HE, FE, learning, and the split between the art forms has sometimes become connected and sometimes more polarized. So, 25 years creative industry. There wasn't a DCMS in '95 for sort of senior tutors and people who work in government. So that's quite interesting. The rub against technology obviously has influenced all the sectors. So they got national theatre, beaming theatre into all the rural areas. Obviously, the change between platforms and music is self-explanatory. So I think there's really interesting growth stuff. I think what we have, the problems that you have is you have polarization in communities. You have funding that goes to particular art forms and particular genres. So what we're coming from is a very civic, old school way of thinking. If you look at, say, a lot of the money that's distributed, say, towards music, 80% of it is classical and opera. Now, I don't want to get my union friends upset about distribution of funds, but this is the Academy of Contemporary Music. If we don't modernize our thinking, but also challenge and have critical discourse and understand our own bias and privilege, things won't change. So everyone talks about change and new models of working, partnerships is key, but actually having those real complex conversations, I think, is going to get us out of this sort of recession or world that we're in. If you look at the history of, in particular, black music, the best black music, Public Enemy didn't come out of funding from New York. Coltrane didn't come out of 52nd Street. The blues didn't come out of this. Afrobeat, actually it comes from often oppressed areas. And the sounds and the sonics of the UK, this is what we don't celebrate enough is, we have a phenomenon, we're a small island in the whole of the world. And we export our music to Asia. We create genres, UK garage, grime, and then we export these to the rest of the world, and stuff like that really needs to be explored, whether that's through talent and learning or whether that's through investment. So that's the sort of big thing that I felt in the last 25 years.
If I can follow up, how have you seen, if at all, the role of the record label change? And what I mean by that is, used to be, the way to get heard, whether it be through distribution, whether it be through promotion, obviously also some artist and talent development as well. Again, now that the advent of streaming, some artists, including a lot of our students, have said, oh, well, I have no interest in a label, I'm just going to go solo and do it myself, and then they realize that's a little bit more difficult than they originally thought on paper, that no, you can't just upload a track to Spotify and automatically start getting millions of streams per week. Have you changed your approach as a label about how you interact with your artists, what type of support you're giving them? Do you try to give them guidance through this, or how does that work for you and Punch Records?
We've always been about people and place. So Birmingham first, West Midlands, UK. So that's our sort of barometer of how we work, and we lean into that in terms of investment. In terms of record labels and money, I think Master P said it 15 years ago: 80% marketing, 20% talent. So if you can get if you get your money from somewhere else, get it from somewhere else, because it's 80% marketing. And that's not about artists not being talented. It's just saying this is the machine, and if you know the guys who sort of understand tech, like these guys, you work with them, you understand and you learn from them. So I mean, we as a company, we haven't changed in terms of trying to understand people, place, and sonics. In terms of the work that we've done, we're always changing. We're agile. We're not big enough we're not a university. We don't have a massive board that we need to sort of present to over 10 years just to make some change. We're quite agile, and we quite like that space as well. And also we sit in the sort of right in the center between commercial and public sector, and that's a really complex space to sit in itself.
Sure. Without trying to make this too rambly. So yes, technology has certainly been something that's been a part of my journey university educated in Nashville, Tennessee. Yes, we have schools out there at the United States' oldest music business program. To where I would go to class wearing a Napster T-shirt, and my teachers would go, "What the heck are you doing, son? That's literally the reason you're not going to find a job in this industry." And yeah, it was tough. So moved over to the UK, worked in digital distribution for quite a while at a company called AWOL. Lived in the era of the advent of social media, so that was going to save everything. The advent of the download store, the concept of iTunes, that was suddenly going to bring revenue back, certainly didn't prop things up. And then, of course, now in the era of streaming. And sure, social media and streaming has lowered the barriers of entry, also recording technology. Streaming has actually brought money back into the industry. We're higher than we were back in the physical era, which looks really good on the chart. But because of those low barriers to entry, we've got more music out there than ever before. I mean, hundreds, if not thousands of times as much. So yeah, there's more in there, but a lot more people fighting for that share of the pot. And to kind of take this to where we are and we're on the cusp of right now, I just came back from Nashville, Tennessee, was out at a conference out there a couple of weeks ago, and there were not very many major label record marketing people who tend to be the clients that I'm looking for. And they'd all lost their jobs. I mean, Interscope Records has cut pretty much all of their marketing team. They just weren't there. And it's because we're on this shift that they've, and the whole industry, especially the record industry, went and chased this concept of the overnight TikTok star that was going to blow up on streaming. They suddenly were working more artists than they'd ever been working, but trying to focus on the ones that they could actually make a difference with. And it turns out that these publicly traded companies, so talking about the major labels, this is not good for their profitability. So they've taken a shift, and so is the whole industry, to go back to the superfan, which arguably is what we used to have, the marketing and the curation. So I think we're in a very interesting place now where we've seen that, yes, the barriers of entry to release music is certainly lower, but the big companies and even the smaller record labels are realizing that it's not sustainable to be working on 100 or 2,000 artists, that they're going to go back to working on the small number that they did and double down on this superfan concept, this concept of actually having an engaged fan base that will transact with you in terms of buying merch or actually come to a gig, hopefully buy some product. Spotify has signaled to us recently, if you all are following, by demonetizing the first 1,000 streams, basically is signaling to the entire industry that don't come to us first. You can get if you can get 800 streams, we're not paying you anything for that. So everything's kind of shifted back, I think, to some balance, and we're on the cusp of it right now, that yes, there's more music than ever. It's easier to get out there, but there are not the same opportunities that there were because the companies are realizing that the profitability, which I think is an interesting place to be. It's starting to balance. The pendulum is swinging, but it's kind of going back to that classic traditional thing of building up a fan base and actually working on something. And yeah, that would be where I'd see it's been changing.
Excellent. And part of the beauty of a day like today is to have this exchange of knowledge and even have your mind changed. And it's pertinent because I came in prepared to ask a question kind of focused on the difficulties facing the creative industries for the next generation. However, is an answer that you gave, Roz, that totally flipped it on its head when Tom was asking you, the same kind of a question, and you said, "What, challenges do you think?" And you said, "None." And it got me thinking, though, because I started thinking about, in my musical journey, all the things I was doing, to get noticed by labels or promoters, and the hundreds of CDs that not only was I burning. And of course, in those days, it had about a 30% fail rate. So, that was time wasted. And of course, and we only had like about 4 times overwrite speed. And then, you're pressing up all the jewel cases, and then physically standing in line at the post office to mail all those out. And I was in New York at the time, so lots of transatlantic postage. And I started thinking about, well, first of all, yeah, it is a lot easier that I can reach out to people much more directly, whether it be DMs on social media, whether it be emailing and not having to stand in line or these things, but also the fact that the old school grind still applies in the fact that, even if maybe more so, for instance, because people do things digitally, if someone actually finds you in person to get on your radar, that's going to stand out and that's going to be much more memorable. So maybe taking my original idea and flipping on its head, what would, kind of seeing how things have been and the potential for the future you see, what advice would you give to a younger you if that younger you existed now?
Wow. Younger me. Look, what I say to younger people I know coming into the business, and I don't think will change anytime soon, is networking. Do you know what I mean? I just do not see anything more than knowing the person you're trying to get to. And I still tell them, like, look, you want to get the DJ, go stand outside the radio station. You know, hot, cold, whatever, you're determined, you want to make that contact, you go stand there, you make a friend, you go to the gig, you make sure you stick around afterwards, you try meet the DJ. Do you know what I mean? I think there is nothing greater than knowing people and actually getting people to like you and want to help you, therefore. I'm literally a product of that by sitting in this room right now. It's through my network and people I know and have had the conversation with and who like me, have liked me enough to actually give me a helping hand. Beyond that, an email, a faceless entity, yes, you can get lucky, but it doesn't really work. And there's just more and more of that coming at you than ever before. More emails, more streams, more faceless entities, more brands, more ideas, just more of everything. That doesn't get better than meeting you and us talking. Do you know what I mean? So that's always my, I haven't managed to get away from that piece of advice. Yes, let's just put it that way.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think obviously what I do is a little bit different, and the way that, I don't work in the music industry, I work in the theatre industry, so it can be a little bit different. But I never forget when I asked somebody for some career advice who worked in a large organisation. They told me that at that time they received a massive pile of CVs every week like that, and someone would print them out and leave them on their desk. And if somebody called up and said, "Did you get my CV? Did you get what I reached out to you with?" They would pull it out of the pile, and the rest, they would go like that, and they would end up in the bin at the end of the week. And for me, I always remember that story because I think it really demonstrates that point that it is easy to send an email, it is easy to reach out to 500 people in a day, but the thing that really gets through is perseverance and individual relationships and making those connections. And that's what it's all about, I think. I think for me personally, if I was to go back, I was quite, I really did persevere, but I sort of wish that I'd been a bit braver in some of the decisions I made. And I think there are decisions that I made that were brave. I mean, I moved city for all of the opportunities that I had, and I really tried to chase that opportunity. But I also think I was quite scared. And so that would be my advice to myself, is to be braver whilst I was in a position that I could be braver, and I was freer, and I could do things, and I didn't have family commitments and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So mine is a mixture of both. So it's just a case. I mean, the thing is, as humans, we hate going to places that we don't know people or we're not connected. And the only way you're going to do new trade is by going to those spaces. So I was lucky because I was just a bit, like when I was a bit younger, I was like, yeah, we'll just go everywhere, like education, commercial, life, whatever. I just built this resilience. Nowadays, people feel really uncomfortable about walking into a space where they don't know. Some of it's about confidence, but trust me, when you do it 10 times, you just get used to it. So the first thing I would do is, you are not going to get trade from where everybody else is. You're not going to get the business that you want. So you have to go to, sometimes you have to put a shirt on, sometimes you have to put a sweatshirt on, a hoodie, whatever, whatever's appropriate to whatever environment. But just go to spaces, and that's where you'll find new work and new conversations. And it's far more inspiring when you come back out. I just met two people that I really didn't know, rather than tribal. So this is kind of like tribalism within creative industries. That I've got a team, and I get really upset when I say, if you stick together, I'm going to be really, really annoyed with you. Go and talk to new people. And the tribalism is across all the art forms, whether it's theatre, whether it's tech. We're just humans, aren't we? We like to talk to people that look like us, sound like us. So if we can sort of dismantle that, that's really, honestly, it really helps you when you're a little bit older.
I agree with all that, but I'm going to try and be contrary just to give another opinion. In the sense that all those things are extremely important. Like, there's nothing that, and so I'm not saying face-to-face, we all know that, but I think there's also something that, not being as young as I once was, but trying to understand this of a younger generation, this idea of community, that is the post-social media era. For those that have ever gamed on Discord, something I'm trying to do now, I'm finding slightly terrifying, but leaning into it. But the idea of these decentralized communities that exist outside of our big meta X, as it's now called, or whatever, TikTok brands, but these places and these spaces that a younger generation especially is creating, that exists not publicly, it's not posting it out there, and that people are actually finding each other despite geography, still in this tribal sense of connecting around something. So whether that's a specific video game or a passion around an artist. And I think there is something to be translated, and it doesn't replace in any way, shape, or form, but it can enhance that relationship that we're talking about there. So to add something that I suppose is complementary, but also it is existing online, and there are people that are restricted by geography or unable to go and maybe connect with a community, that they are building online communities that are more closed spaces for them, as in you're allowed to go in there together, but it's not something broadcast to the world. And I think that that's something that came out of the pandemic, certainly, that we found. And that gives me some hope that digital's not all just the mindless algorithm stream, and that it can actually be used to supplement. I mean, I'll end it in a more personal way. Most of my family live in Los Angeles and Atlanta on the other side of the ocean, but I have to, rely on digital means to stay in communication, to understand time zone, working with teams across the world. And there are ways that you can use technology to not replace, but to mimic and to supplement that which we lose when we don't have that time for the face-to-face. So that's my point in it.
Excellent. Before we wrap it up, I just thought, first of all, a huge thanks to the panel, but I wanted to open up to the audience to see if anyone had a question that they would like to ask the panel as well.
Hi guys, thank you for the talk. I have a question for Amo actually. In terms of all the things that you see happening within our culture right now within Birmingham, what do you think are some of the immediate steps that we should take, like as an industry, to address some of these? Like in terms of like what's the priority that it's essential that we all come together and address this factor?
I think as a city, we could be a little bit more inquisitive about where work is and how work flows. So everywhere you go, everyone's setting up a podcast, like in every city, in every single region. And what a lot of people don't know is there's a little procurement page on the BBC that procures podcasts. Like, no one knows about it, no one wants to share it, but it's just that thing of being a little bit, I think as a city, there's loads of things. It's a big question, loaded. So like local authority could sort themselves out, a combined authority could, we could have better sort of conversations around HE and FE. Universities could reduce prices, so you don't need the bank of mum and dad to, go to a theatre school or a dance school. So there's sort of like, structural issues. But in terms of just kind of like sort of straight up, like if you're young, and I think we've got our own ecosystem, like Manchester, like Leeds, like Liverpool. So understand where our ecosystem is. And it could be dependent on genre, it could be dependent on art form, but it's just being more inquisitive about where other work is. And also being really pragmatic and being honest. The thing is, I get annoyed when people say, oh, well, there's nothing going on in Birmingham. Well, I says, well, travel to London. It costs you like 15 quid on the cheap train. And go and meet like one person like every week, if you can. And your networks will unpack like that. And people, I'm not sure whether people are, scared to travel. It's too expensive to travel. I'm not sure. They don't know where to travel. But, the thing is, that everyone reaches a glass ceiling in your sort of trajectory, and then you need to sort of go to other places. And when you go to other places, they're just as crap as Birmingham. No, I'm joking. You know what I mean? It's just like, they're all the same. But you meet new people and you go, oh my God, there's something happening over there. Oh my God, Salford. There's this whole BBC network of like procured work and technology, and there's the platforms. And I think it just the notion of being really inquisitive, and you can do that digitally. You can really kind of move around. So you could do the R&D stuff. So when I was young, I was catching coaches to London. I had a record store, so I was catching coaches at 6 o'clock in the morning, 3-hour coach. I'd never do that now. Get there for 9, hit 6 labels, come back for 9. It's like it was the whole day. Now, I catch the fast train. But that I think that training as well. I called it a kind of YTS, and I'm so glad I did that training. I think we could be better at training ourselves. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
In the review that you've just done, I'm just interested to know your opinion, each of you, about whether you think the power structure has changed in the music industry particularly, and if so, how? And that might include the power of the major companies as an oligopoly running the show, the role of indies, the role that has been around employment and diversity and power in board structures and so on. I wonder if you could give your thoughts about that aspect of the music industry.
I suppose I could start with I'll go with the companies. I'll take that one. Sort of unfortunately not. I mean, independence is much stronger in this country than it is in a lot of places, which a lot of the world looks to the UK because some of the world's greatest independent labels are based here. Fiercely independent, fight to stay so. And I think that's always a wonderful and beautiful thing. But I've worked with all of these companies and they do a great thing, but the people that work there tend to have a passion for that. Unfortunately, consolidation is kind of what I was talking about with these major labels and cutting things down. It also means they're expanding another aspect of it, which is the distribution, the soft touch side. So yes, independent companies are certainly always my background was working for an independent company, fiercely independent, out of Sheffield, now owned by Sony after my time. But I kind of watched this over and over, and it's something that's very important to me to watch which is the best independent company to look at. And you asked me 2-3 years ago, they're now owned by one of those major entities. So there is still that sort of consumption model of it sort of, being consumed into these big publicly traded companies, unfortunately.
If there aren't any other questions, I just would then ask everyone to join me in thanking this fantastic panel. Again, Patrick, Amo, Zaylee, and Ross, thank you very much. Also, we have just one more presentation after this, but I've been asked to let people know in case anyone needs to duck out that we do have some wonderful ACM swag bags on the way out, so please do make sure to pick up one of those. But again, thank you to the panel, and we'll just have one more thing shortly. So thank you.
session opens, gather round.
I have to tip my hat to Tom for his organisational skills. Also, Matt Peters for carrying us through the afternoon. For anyone who doesn't know me, I'm the campus lead in Birmingham, very proud campus lead. I have been the campus lead for 15 years, it's a long time. Turned grey in that time, but lots of good memories. We used to be a music shop. It was a music shop that had great heritage in Birmingham, place called Musical Exchanges. It brought a lot of history and had a lot of context for loads of people in Birmingham over a period of time. So we're in a proud part of Birmingham, a part of Birmingham that's got music heritage. We're also not too far from Aston, Handsworth, Lozells, areas that have got brilliant invention in music and have got invention in music over decades, really. Birmingham itself does not celebrate its music enough. And I think that's a big part of why we're trying to do an initiative that I'm going to talk to Am about in a second. We recognise in Birmingham that we have a piece of work to do. I think Cornelia and Maya have done a wonderful piece of work across ACM in talking to our black and minority ethnic students, identifying how they feel about their experience at ACM. And I think there's a part of that which is a continual conversation, and there's a part of that which is starting to take some action, positive action, practical steps. And I think one of those practical steps that we want to take as an organisation is to open up an opportunity for students from socially diverse backgrounds, from black and minority ethnic households, to get an opportunity to come and study at ACM. And very, very pleased to announce the fact that we are today launching our scholarship partnership with Punch Records. Amo started Punch in 1997 and is an innovator, and we're extremely proud to be going into this with Amo. So from my part, I just want to thank you, Amo, for your faith in ACM. Really looking forward to working in partnership with you and giving the first undergraduate this September a chance to get a degree programme for free.
It's an amazing opportunity, and so the word academy, contemporary music, I think that's really important. That's the first thing. Secondly, I think it's really important to understand cities, where people live in cities is often not in the city centre. The genres that have come out of Birmingham, the biggest genres, I'm talking Sabbath, rock, I'm talking Bhangra, Soho Road, I'm talking reggae, they come from areas where people live, where communities eat and break bread. And so, we've always been about serving those communities, and it just so happens that those communities are super diverse. We as a city we think UK's first plural city. That means we're majority not white English. It makes new music, it makes new genres. And so we see this scholarship as a step in the right direction to understand how institutions have to recognize the changing ecosystem of cities, people, and what people want to learn. And so we're excited. It's not just a technical relationship where, a young student saves 20,000 on a scheme. When we're onboarding the student, we're going to work with them so they get some real strong, nuanced, lived experience. And also, we're going to chuck them in the deep end as well. This isn't like, we mustn't mollycoddle what we're doing here. It's tough. You have to be competitive. You have to have a benchmark of excellence. And this is what the partnership is. It's a new partnership. So, we're going to go through our sort of toing and froing, and we have done already, but it's exciting. And we see this as a long-term strategic goal for us to kind of be able to work with institutions to say, look, it doesn't matter. It's that thing in it. It's like talent is everywhere, access isn't. Not everybody has the bank of mum and dad. So this is definitely the future for us as an organisation. So we want to thank the Academy of Music. Yeah, cool.
I don't really have anything to add to that other than to just thank David and Amo again for bringing this all together. It's incredibly exciting, and we can't wait to get some new students through the doors sponsored by the scholarship. Thank you very much, guys. Much appreciated, guys. Guys, that's it. That's our second annual symposium done. Thank you so much for coming today. All of this has been recorded, so just another massive thanks to Matt, massive thanks to Ollie, there he is, a massive thanks to everyone who's been involved today, presenters, schedulers, etc. There are some goodie bags on the way out. Other than that, thank you.
The future of creative fields profound. Martin Downs' voice sets the tone in spaces where creativity is known. At the ACM Symposium, where ideas ignite, creative futures shining bright. From morning talks to evening glow, in the heart of innovation we grow.